If you watched my recent videos about making a song on QuaverEd, you might be under the impression that I didn't enjoy it. That's not great, but I'm starting to really hate it. I could do without most of it.
I hate this. I am miserable.
I don't know why you would think that, though. In all sincerity, the reason that I wasn't having a great time was because I was pretending that QuaverEd was a digital audio workstation, or DAW for the initiated. But it's not. It's an educational program. Today I'm going to give QuaverEd the home field advantage, judge it by its own grounds, what it's trying to do, and see if it holds up. Let's get weird with music. If you're a parent trying to get your kids interested in music, or you're a teacher trying to teach music, would I recommend QuaverEd? Yeah, absolutely. It's a great program. When I think of music education, I think of it as 5 different categories: music theory, sound design, diversity, performance, and history. Music theory, 10 out of 10, no questions asked. Sound design, we'll go with like 9 out of 10. Diversity, again, 10 out of 10, if not better. Performance, we'll say 8 through 10 out of 10, and I'll get to that a little later. And music history, well, that's a big oof. I'm gonna give it like a 4 out of 10. Let's just take it category by category. Number 1, music theory. Music theory is at the very core of this program. It is littered everywhere throughout. Let me give you just a handful of examples. Alright, so when you first get on Quaver, you've got this little handy Quaver curriculum. We're going to be looking at that a lot today. What Quaver curriculum is it's got pre-K through 8th grade, and it's got different lessons plans. Lesson 1's Welcome to Music, Lesson 2 Steady Beat, Lesson 3 Strong and Weak Beats, and each one teaches a concept in music. So music theory is all over this. As early as 1st grade, learning about things like pitches and intervals and learning the basics of treble clef, and then as you get on to like 5th grade, you're learning about accidentals, dynamics, sharps and flats, which is just accidentals, rhythm dictation, all sorts of good stuff, right? What I really like about it is as early as 1st grade, you're learning some of the harder concepts, but in a very easy, approachable way. Like, for instance, the 1st grade lesson number 9 introduces you to a character named Austin Otto, who teaches you all about the ostinato. This concept is reinforced over and over again. 2nd grade, lesson 9, having a lesson titled Ostinatos 2, 3rd grade having assigned ostinatos again, and in 4th grade going up to melodic ostinatos. And that's just an example of something that's permeates through this entire program, of just taking a complicated subject, having a simple version of it, and then reinforcing it over time. So I couldn't recommend this enough. In 4th grade, we're already starting to get into more niche topics when it comes to music, things that people don't like to talk about because they're kind of hard to explain, things like timbre and articulation. It's on a 4th grade level, so it's simple, it's really helpful, and it would be great for a kid to understand. Like, for instance, they have this timbre matching game in which you get some characters. Boo-bop, shoo-waddy-waddy. And then you have to find a different melody sung by that same character. You're matching the timbre, and that is fantastic, and I love that.
Boo-bop, shoo-waddy-waddy. Boo-bop, la-la-la-la-la.
La-la-la. Ooh-bop, shoo-wabby-wabby.
Boo-bop, shoo-wabby-wabby. La-la-la-la-la-la.
Boo-bop, shoo-waddy-waddy. La-la-la-la-la-la.
Of course, Quaver curriculum isn't the only part of Quaver. There's so much more. Like, for instance, I'm clicking wrong buttons here. here in the Creatives tab, you have Q Composer, which you might recognize because I spent a lot of time in this in my second video. Okay. It's just composing music. So there's really no end to the different ways you can teach harmony and melody using this tab. I'm giving music theory a perfect 10 out of 10. Let's move on to category number 2, sound design. Now, I'm not much of a producer. It's just not where my interests lie. To be honest, I'm not going to be the best at saying whether or not this is good at teaching the elements of production. But this is my video, so I'm going to give it a shot anyway. The most notable thing is this Q synth. And this has got everything you need. You can learn about different types of waveforms with amplitude, phase, harmonics. You can detune it so you can see the waves on the graph getting larger and smaller as I detune, which is just fantastic. You can play it right in different octaves. And then, even cooler, you can add multiple tones to it. Just on this tab alone, you can get the information to do anything that an amateur producer could do. But that's not even the only place where you get to learn about sound design. Going back yet again to Quaver curriculum. Alright, so on the second grade tab, on lesson 27, it's called The Science of Sound. Now, this is super basic stuff. You learn about vibration, and you just kind of get to hear the way different instruments sound. And there's even this whole big video about how larger tubes tend to make lower pitch sounds, whereas smaller tubes tend to make higher pitch sounds. So this is super basic, but it's there. It is the principles of sound design as understood by a second grader. Now, I'm not going to give this a 10 out of 10 because there is a lot more to sound design. So a 6th or a 7th grader might be able to comprehend sound design much more on the level of waveforms and things like that, and there's just not really an opportunity to do that outside of the synth. So I'm going to dock 1 point for that, giving sound design a solid 9 out of 10. So far, Quaver's doing great. Let's move on. Category number 3, diversity. There's a huge hot button debate going on in the music world right now over whether there should be a big focus on classical, Baroque, and Romantic music, the way there really is an overwhelming focus on these things. Music is just so much broader than just what people were doing in Germany in 1750. So why is that the exclusive thing being taught? So is Quaver guilty of this? At first, I was actually going to say yes, because the only place I had seen while I was making my video where they talked about music history was this tab right here called Box Brain. And Box Brain is full of problems. And we're actually going to get to that a little bit later. Now, one thing I want to point out about this is that there's 6 composers listed on Box Brain, and out of them, 5 of them are German. Pretty narrow-minded. You're leaving out all sorts of traditions from all over the world. Okay, so I realize it's not all that helpful to criticize something without offering up a solution to fix it. So if you'll humor me for a minute, I'll show you what the lineup would be if I got to choose it. In place of Handel, I would include Igor Stravinsky. Stravinsky is a Russian composer, so already that adds 1 new country to the list. And the fact that he once wrote a song which included literal cannons as an instrument makes him an obvious choice for this children's program, because nothing gets kids excited like explosions. Also, you would have an LGBTQ member for the roster. Now, that shouldn't make it into his video. His sexuality had nothing to do with him being an influential composer. It's really just a fun fact. Secondly, I would add Miles Davis in place of Wagner. He's a black American jazz trumpetist, and his music, or at least jazz in general, is a major influence on almost every type of music that is popular in America today. And if that wasn't enough to convince you, he comes with a very sad yet inspirational story of when he was arrested for trespassing at his own concert, which could be a great way to teach kids about sticking with your craft in the face of adversity. Now, almost everything I have said for him could also be said for William Grant Still, and he would be an excellent choice if you wanted to stick to strictly composers. But between the two, I'd say that Davis is the more influential, so he makes my list. And finally, in place of Ravel, I would include Pythagoras, simply because without Pythagoras' work, none of the others would have been able to do what they did. He really is the father of Western music. Now, this list is still fairly West-centric, but given the task of having to narrow down my list of influential composers down to only 6 people that give insight into why music sounds the way that it does today, I stand by this list. Check this out. So if you go to the class play tab, you get a place where they just have songs of all sorts, and you can scroll through and pick one. You can analyze it in several different ways. Now, while we're here on the class play tab, we're going to kind of jump ship from cultural inclusion and move into genre inclusion, because there is a lot of cool stuff. As you can see, this list goes on a long time. There are so many things. What's Disco Penguin? So I had several of them that I'd planned on bringing up, and that wasn't any of them. I just happened to see that one. Here's one I'd planned on. Yeah, we've got heavy metal. Right below it, we got 4 Seasons. It must be Vivaldi. Oh. What?
Sing, summer, winter, fall, spring, summer. It's hot, hot, hot.
You go outside and shoot a basketball shot.
There he's rapping, but notated in standard notation, and it's just... Oh! Afro-American Symphony 1 Moderato. Meet William Grant Still. Good stuff, good stuff. Pharrell Williams' song Happy. It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. The Homework Blues. Gotta have some Brahms in there. And you can never go wrong with jazz. This one's for our ladies. There's no words. Right, so the diversity is looking a lot better, but there's more. So look at this one right here. Making music worldwide. Jumping back onto the cultural diversity ship, you can choose whether you want to take the path of songs or instruments. I'm going with songs, and it just gives you the globe, and you can just choose what culture you want to learn about. So like right here, if I click on Africa, first of all, you get very specific spots of Africa, which I love, because so often just Africa as a continent is grouped together and be like, oh, look at African music, but it's like saying, no, look at North American music, and then you're bunching together mariachi with gangsta rap. So I really, really like that they tell you specifically which part of Africa things come out of, but for the most part. Pick a song, and you can listen to it and learn all about it. This is Obwisana.
Obwisana sa na na obwisana sa. Obwisana sa na na obwisana sa.
It's not just Africa, you can do that with every continent. Let's learn about something from Wales. Oh, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Okay, that's I'm just guessing here, but that's probably not the greatest example of Welsh music, but at least it's included. And we haven't even looked at the curriculum, not for diversity anyway. So when you get up to 5th grade, you start getting lessons about cultural music. For instance, lesson 9 in 5th grade is you have a lesson called Music from China. Lesson 6, you get to learn about African percussion. 7th grade, you get to learn about Latin percussion. And 8th grade, Asian percussion. So from 5th to 8th grade, you have at least one lesson about music that comes from a different culture. That's super inspiring and amazing to me, and I love that. So for diversity, 10 out of 10, and that's only because I can't really go higher than that. Screw it. It's my video. 11 out of 10. Now part 4, let's talk about performance. So this is a bit harder to tell how good it's going to be because it largely depends on the teacher. If you're learning to perform, you really need somebody to see what you're doing, listen to you, give feedback directly to you what you're doing, right? There's definitely opportunities for that. Look at the Quaver curriculum, 4th grade, and then you have 6 lessons here that teach you about rap, which, okay, probably should have mentioned that in the diversity tab, but that's 6 lessons talking about rap, and then the last one is a performance. So you're performing for your class and your teacher can give you direct feedback. And so that already scores pretty high, and there's more than just that. Here in the teacher toolbox set tab, you have a metronome, you have a pitch pipe, you have a feedback sandwich where, again, a teacher can hear what you're doing and give you direct feedback. And that's not all. You also have this Quaver choral, which is just warm-ups and vocal exercises that just help you to become a better singer. So with performance, I give it 8 through 10 out of 10 because it's so much depends on your teacher, whether or not you're going to have a good experience learning performance here. But the tools are definitely there. And last, I hate to bring it up, let's talk about music history. Earlier I mentioned that Bach's brain had so many problems. And Bach's brain is full of problems. This is where they come in. As I already mentioned once, there's only 6 videos you get here, and 5 of them are German, 1 is French, so all of them come out of Europe. So it's super narrow, but even more than that, they don't give you that much information. Like, for instance, the video on Bach is literally telling you a story about how he found money in a trash can one time. Like, that has nothing to do with music. Okay, so they all have moral lessons behind them. They're not just random factoids. The idea behind Bach's is about determination. In the story, he walks 30 miles to meet some organist who inspired him, and then he was walking back, and he was starving, and then he found some money for food in the trash can, and that wouldn't have happened to him if he wasn't determined to meet this guy. But the truth is, he also wouldn't have been starving in the first place if he hadn't have been so determined to meet this guy. So I'm not sure that's a great lesson. The truth is, all of them are like that except for one, and that's Wagner's. And Wagner's, oh man, Wagner's is bad. Like, listen to this.
But one very special thing that he invented was the idea of the motif.
Okay, pause. This next part might sound like me splitting hairs and getting all worked up about nothing if you don't know the difference between a motif and a leitmotif. A motif is pretty much anything that repeats. A famous example from Bach is called creatively the Bach motif, that he used as a signature over a lot of his pieces. See, Bach being German wouldn't have understood the staff the same way as us English speakers would. He would have called B flat in German nomenclature, which is B, and he would have called A, and what we call C is C, and what we call B natural would be called H. So this B-A-C-H motif would be snuck into a very large portion of his works. I really only bring this one up because it's important to note that Bach was using motifs almost 100 years before Wagner was born. Now, let me give you another example that may hit a little closer to home. So Guns N' Roses and their only #1 song played this. And then to establish it as a motif, played it over and over again in the copyright-protected riff we all know and love today, adding small variations to better match the chord Izzy Stradlin was playing. But what's even cooler is they bring back another version of the very same motif to bring it all together in the chorus. This motif is the glue that holds the song together. A leitmotif, on the other hand, I like to call the nouns of music. It's a musical phrase that represents a person, place, thing, or idea. Like, remember in Star Wars when you see Darth Vader and you hear this? So years and years later, when this kid shows up on screen and this music plays, you have to stop and raise an eyebrow. The exact same leitmotif is used by both of them, so these two characters must in some way be linked. So in short, a motif is for keeping continuity and a leitmotif is for telling a story.
Well, Wagner didn't invent the motif, he invented the leitmotif, and even that's up for debate. When he talks about it later, he uses the correct definition for it. He equates it to,
Like when Darth Vader walks on in Star Wars and you always hear that tune.
and so you were just led to assume that he's making it simpler for the sake of the children. Because, you know, light is a German word and this is presented to an English-speaking audience, so you don't want to confuse them with all these German words. Except, motif is German too! You're literally just subbing out one German word for a different German word! There is no point in cutting the word light out of this. Now you're just making the information wrong for no reason! He goes on to talk about Wagner's amazing 15-hour-long opera called The Ring. But it's not called The Ring, it's called Zeres Nayublin, I think. Okay, so I get why they didn't call it that, but it translates to The Ring Cycle. There's no reason to have changed the name of that. If somebody saw this video and wanted to learn more, was interested about it, they couldn't even look it up, because when you type in The Ring on the Google search bar, you get the movie where the chick comes out of the TV. It's just, this is frustrating to me. That he's just getting information wrong for the sake of simplicity. You can be simple and right. So far, we have like a 0 out of 10 for history. In the Quaver curriculum, starting in 2nd grade, you get the Baroque period. And it's 3 lessons talking all about the Baroque period. And then in 3rd grade, you get one on the classical period. 4th grade, the Romantic period, right there. And 5th grade, the Impressionist period. Now, this is good. This is better. But I still have a little bit of a problem with it, and that's what's important and interesting about these periods is how they move from one to the other. Every period is a direct reaction from the last. The Baroque period is all about being fancy and elegant and intellectual.
This is big brain time.
Whereas the period that comes after that, the classical period, is a direct reaction to that. It's more emotionally driven, it's simpler, because they're trying to get away from this pretentious, fancy Baroque music. So why do I bring this up? By splitting all of these periods up a year apart from each other, you're kind of missing out on the way that the puzzle pieces fit together, which to me is the most interesting and the most important part to understand about it. But I have to give it some points because the information is there. And it's not just there. You also have this right here under Quaver Essentials, which is brilliant. You have all these videos reminiscent of like a musical Bill Nye the Science Guy. But you have 4 videos right here that do an excellent job of talking about the different periods. Again, Baroque, Classical, Romantic, and Impressionist. These are lined up closer to each other, so you would be able to put the puzzle pieces a little bit together. And okay, to be honest, in preparation for this video, I only watched one of them, and it was the Baroque period. But what they did a good job of doing in the Baroque period is showing how the Baroque period was a juxtaposition from the Renaissance, which came before it. And so you do get to see that reaction. Every period has a reaction from the last period, and the choices that they make weren't just arbitrary choices, they were reactionary to what people were doing before that. So a few more points. So there's another place, but I don't really love it because it's kind of hard to find. You have to go student interactivities, and then these categories on the side, you have to go all the way to the bottom to Quaver books. And you get these books that they wrote, like interactive books. And some of them, you know, you have one about Beethoven, you have one about Cristofori, Debussy, Vivaldi. So you do get a little bit of history from that as well, but they're considerably less fun than the rest of it. You're just reading, but they are super informative. I did read a few of them, and I actually learned some stuff. I know it's a children's program, and I'm well into my 20s, but I actually did learn some stuff by reading these books. So I do enjoy that they're in there for sure. There is definitely something for everybody. Again, that brings up our point ratio a little bit more. I'm going to call it 5 out of 10. There's one more big problem, and I would honestly give history a 6 out of 10 if it wasn't for this one specific thing in a tab where you can talk to Beethoven. And to be honest, for the life of me, I don't even remember how I got to this page. I was just clicking buttons, and then I ended up here. And you have different things, and when you click on them,
Later in life, I began to go deaf.
Beethoven tells you a little bit of a story. If you click on this coin, however, he says this.
I am the first composer to make money from selling music.
I don't know where they got that from. That's not even kind of true. I mean, Bach made money selling music. Vivaldi made money selling music. I mean, Vivaldi kind of died poor, but he still did make money at some point selling music. So that alone, I know it's just one small line in a big program, but God, that's just blatantly false, and so I can't ignore that. So I'm gonna say 4 out of 10 for music history. So I know that kind of ended on a negative note, but I think all things considered, Quaver's a good program. If I had kids, I would absolutely force feed them QuaverEd. Hands down. If I was a music teacher, I would definitely use QuaverEd as a resource, and not just for younger kids either. It's got some great resources for, you know, first, second, third graders, but all the way up to 8th graders, and honestly beyond. So I would use this all the way up through high school, teaching music. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I've got a lot of videos planned to come out. It's just they're going to come out slowly because, well, most things I do require a lot of research, and so I'm getting videos out as fast as I can, so definitely subscribe so you don't miss any of them. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.